Today we will be doing a deep dive into the world of health. From a book by Tim Conklin, How I Reversed Type 2 Diabetes, and what I learned along the way.
Have you ever just felt completely, swamped by all the health advice out there? One day fat's the villain, the next day it's carbs.
Oh, absolutely. It's confusing.
Right, enough to make you just want to give up. And yet, even with all these rules, it really seems like more and more people are dealing with chronic issues.
Things like type 2 diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, they're just skyrocketing.
Exactly, and people feel like they're trying to follow the advice. So what if a lot of what we've been told, especially about diet, is just, fundamentally wrong, maybe for decades?
That's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at one listener story, Tim Conklin, and the pretty deep research he pulled together. It really challenges a lot of these widely accepted health guidelines.
Okay.
Our goal here is really to pull out the key insights from his work, and it offers, a fresh perspective, sometimes a pretty provocative one, honestly, on these chronic diseases.
All right, so let's jump right in and maybe challenge some of those core beliefs. Like this idea that eating saturated fat, butter, eggs, that sort of thing, is that really what makes you gain weight and spikes your heart attack risk?
And what about high cholesterol? Is that the direct cause of heart disease and diabetes? It's a question worth asking.
Or are vegetable oils, canola oil and the like, are they definitely better for you than something like butter?
Does your doctor actually get much training in nutrition? It's surprising how little is often covered.
Do we even need carbohydrates for good health? That's a big one.
And here's another one that might make you pause.
Mm-hmm.
Those foods with the heart healthy check mark from, say, the American Heart Association, are they genuinely good for your heart?
According to the research we're looking at today, the answer to a lot of these might just be a big no.
So, let's get into it.
Okay, our deep dive starts with Tim Conklin's own story, and it's incredibly personal, but I think probably very relatable for a lot of people.
Yeah, for years he was dealing with type 2 diabetes, obesity, all while thinking he was doing okay, eating a fairly healthy standard American diet.
The usual stuff.
Right. And he gets the diagnosis, same as so many others. Basically, you've got diabetes for life. You'll need more and more drugs. Metformin, eventually Lantus injections.
That sounds disheartening.
Extremely. And his frustration just grew. He actually said, I was not getting better, and I was getting more frustrated. I think that feeling resonates.
Yeah, that rock bottom feeling sometimes. But that frustration, that can be the spark, right? For Tim, it was this belief he had that the Creator designed our bodies with the ability to heal.
That pushed him to look for alternatives, do his own research.
So he first tried an experiment with the HCG diet. That's a human chorionic gonadotropin.
Right. It's a hormone, often part of these really extreme low-calorie diets. We're talking 500 calories a day.
Wow.
Zero fat. Daily injections. And, he did lose weight fast. His blood sugar even normalized for a bit. But there was a huge flaw. Zig Ziglar used to say something like, you didn't gain weight taking pills, you won't lose it long-term taking pills.
Makes sense.
And that's what happened. The weight just came back. Because the underlying issue, the root cause, it wasn't addressed. Plus, that kind of extreme dieting can really mess with your metabolism, slow it right down. It was just a temporary fix.
So when not the answer, what then?
Well, this is where Tim made what he calls a rebellious choice. And he's very clear, you should not do this without professional medical guidance. He stopped all his prescribed drugs.
Okay, bold move.
Yeah. And then he switched his lifestyle completely, adopted a low-carbohydrate, high-fat approach, LCHF, and then later in 2023, he went even further towards a carnivore diet.
And the results?
Pretty dramatic, actually. His average fasting glucose, it settled right down between 77 and 97. That's really
huge difference.
He lost over 25 pounds. His waist size went from 46 inches down to 38. And this was all with no drugs. His takeaway: the proof is in the results. The low-carb, high-fat diet works for me.
That's compelling. But you mentioned a caveat.
Yes, and this is really crucial for anyone listening. Tim stresses, quote, there is no one-size-fits-all diet. You absolutely have to do your own research, find doctors who actually have a track record of reversing these conditions, not just managing them.
Right. It's personal.
Very. His own wife tried the same plan, had a different experience. It just shows our bodies are unique. What works wonders for one person might need tweaking for another.
Okay, so Tim's journey really sets the stage for this bigger claim his sources make. They call it the grand failed experiment.
Yeah, they're talking about the U.S. dietary guidelines, ones that came out in the late 1970s.
The ones that told us all to eat less and exercise more.
That's them. And also embrace a low-fat diet rich in carbohydrates.
Okay, so what's the problem?
Well, the bombshell claim here is that these guidelines were, and this is a direct quote from the source, not based on any scientific study. Apparently they were rushed out. Scientists were warning, hey, we need more research, but politically? Well, Senator George McGovern is quoted as saying something like, senators don't have the luxury of waiting until every last shred of evidence is in.
Wow. So a political decision more than a scientific one.
That's the argument presented, yes.
Yeah.
And if you look at what happened after these guidelines came out, the statistics are just, well, staggering.
How so?
Since the late 70s, chronic diseases have just exploded. Youth bipolar disease up over 10,000%, chronic fatigue over 11,000%, fibromyalgia over 7,000%, autism up almost 2,100%, diabetes up 305%.
Those numbers are hard to ignore. A 305% increase in diabetes since we started telling people to eat low fat and more carbs.
Exactly. The author connects these dots, links the increases to highly processed foods, all the added sugar, environmental chemicals, maybe even the way medicine responded.
So if those guidelines were potentially flawed, it helps explain why the old advice, just count calories, eat less, exercise more, why it doesn't seem to work long-term for so many people, especially those struggling with obesity.
Right. The source flat out says the tiresome business of totting up daily calories is a waste of time for an obese person. And here's the kicker. Eating fat does not make you fat.
Okay, say that again.
Eating fat doesn't make you fat. It's what gets turned into fat and stored. And according to this research, stored fat comes mostly from carbohydrates.
That turns everything upside down.
It really does. Which brings us to what the sources call the dead food problem. Think about skim milk, for example.
Okay. Low fat, supposed to be healthy.
Well, they take out the fat, right? But with the fat go the fat-soluble vitamins like A and D. Then, because it tastes watery, they often add sugar back in to make it palatable. And then emulsifiers, surfactants, things to improve texture and shelf life. The Weston Price Foundation, which is cited here, claims powdered skim milk, often used in this process, contains dangerous oxidized cholesterol and neurotoxic amino acids. Plus, pasteurization itself destroys enzymes and vitamins. It's just not the same as whole milk.
So it's been processed to the point of losing its value, potentially adding harmful things.
That's the argument. And think about fruit juice, too. You take out all the fiber, pasteurize it, the nutritional quality becomes, quote, virtually nil.
That's from fruit.
Yeah, but think about it. You might drink the juice of 4 oranges in one small glass. That's a huge hit of concentrated fructose sugar without the fiber that eating the whole orange provides. That sugar overload apparently causes a host of issues for your liver. It's just not the same.
Okay, so processed milk, juice. What else?
Hidden sugars. It's everywhere. The sources claim 80% of packaged foods have added sugar.
Yeah.
And it hides under all sorts of names.
Like corn syrup.
Corn syrup, dextrose, fructose, maltodextrin, sucrose. The list goes on. And then there's MSG, monosodium glutamate.
The flavor enhancer.
Yep, labeled here as an exotoxin, basically, a neurotoxin from an external source, linked to headaches, fatigue, and get this, leptin resistance. Leptin is the hormone that tells you you're full. If you're resistant, you just feel hungry all the time.
Wow. Okay. That makes you rethink your pantry staples.
It certainly does.
And this logically leads us to the whole cholesterol issue. The sources call it a myth.
Yeah, a pretty strong stance. They state very clearly it is not cholesterol or saturated fat that cause heart disease, obesity, and diabetes.
So, what does, according to them?
Inflammation and damage from things like free radicals. That's where they point the finger.
Okay, but doctors are always checking cholesterol levels, LDL, HDL.
Right, but here's a key distinction they make. Not all LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, is the same. There's large, buoyant LDL, which they say is mostly harmless. And then there's small, dense, oxidized LDL. That's the stuff they say is the real problem. It's more nuanced.
Oxidized LDL, so damaged LDL.
Exactly. And this isn't even a brand new idea. They mention Dr. Michael DeBakey, famous heart surgeon, asking way back in 1964, if cholesterol is the cause, how do you explain the 60 or 70% of people with heart disease who don't have high cholesterol?
That's a really good question.
It is. And the sources emphasize that cholesterol itself isn't the enemy. It's actually essential for optimal health. You need it to make sex hormones, build cell membranes, protect your nerve tissue.
So we actually need it.
Absolutely. In fact, they point out that too low cholesterol, like below 160 milli-GDL, is linked to some serious issues: depression, suicide risk, aggression.
So the lower is always better mantra might be wrong.
That's what this research suggests,
Yeah.
which naturally leads to a critique of statin drugs, the cholesterol-lowering medications.
What do they say about statins?
Basically, that their benefits are overstated, that they might not actually help many people that much, and they come with a list of potential side effects, like muscle pain, cognitive dysfunction, brain fog, memory issues, mitochondrial damage, so hurting your cell's energy production. And the source even claims they might, paradoxically, stimulate atherosclerosis and heart failure.
Wow, that's a huge claim against one of the most prescribed types of drugs.
It's a significant challenge to the conventional narrative, absolutely.
Okay, so if cholesterol and saturated fat aren't the main villains, what is? Let's dig into what Tim's sources say is the real culprit.
Insulin resistance
Right,
and carbohydrates.
right. We hear insulin resistance a lot. What does it mean in this context?
Fundamentally, they define type 2 diabetes as the body's inability to metabolize the load of glucose entering the body.
Glucose, the sugar from carbs.
Exactly. And here's the mechanism they describe. All carbohydrates, whether it's bread or pasta or fruit or sugar, they all break down into glucose in your body.
Okay.
Now, your cells need some glucose for energy, but when you're constantly flooding your system with glucose from a high-carb diet, your cells eventually get saturated. They basically say enough and close the gate.
So the glucose can't get into the cells easily anymore.
Right, which means you end up with excess glucose floating around in your bloodstream that's high blood sugar. Or your body has to do something with it.
Store it as fat.
Bingo.
Mm.
And insulin is the key player here. The sources call it a fat storage hormone.
Not just a blood sugar regulator.
Its primary role in this context, they argue, is storage. And when your insulin levels are constantly high because you're always eating carbs, it does a couple of bad things. First, it keeps telling your body to store fat. Second, it blocks leptin.
Leptin, that was the satiety hormone, right? Tells you you're full.
Exactly. So high insulin blocks leptin, meaning you feel hungry more often, even if you've eaten plenty of calories. It's a vicious cycle.
Increased hunger, more eating, more fat storage.
Yep. Leads to weight gain, especially that dangerous visceral fat around your organs, high blood pressure, chronic inflammation, even mitochondrial malfunction, messing with your cell's basic ability to produce energy.
It's a whole cascade of problems stemming from that initial insulin issue.
Precisely. And Dr. Robert Lustig made this interesting observation. Between 1985 and 2010, calorie intake went up maybe 8%. But diabetes, it went up 727%.
Whoa, that's not proportional at all.
Right. It strongly suggests it's not just how many calories, but what kind of calories. The type matters. Likely the type driving up insulin.
So if carbs and the resulting high insulin are the problem, especially for diabetes, what's the evidence for low-carb diets being the solution?
The sources point to quite a bit of evidence. Low-carb diets consistently show they can reduce blood glucose levels, often dramatically. They're effective for weight loss, and importantly, they can lead to reducing or even completely eliminating diabetes medications.
Without nasty side effects.
Generally, yes. Much fewer significant side effects compared to many drugs because you're addressing the root cause, the glucose overload, rather than just managing the symptoms.
Okay, that makes sense. What about inflammation? You mentioned that earlier as a key factor.
Yes, inflammation is identified as another major player, kind of a silent killer. A little bit of inflammation is good. It's your body's response to injury or infection.
Like when a cut gets red and swollen.
Exactly. That's acute inflammation, and it's protective. The problem is chronic, low-grade, silent inflammation that simmers away for years, damaging blood vessels, organs, just creating problems throughout the body.
And diet plays a role here too.
A huge role, according to these sources. They list specific foods that create inflammation. Things like refined vegetable oils, especially those high in omega-6 fatty acids, refined carbs, added sugars, trans fats, even pasteurized dairy for some people.
The usual suspects in processed foods, it sounds like.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then conversely, they list anti-inflammatory foods. Healthy fats like grass-fed beef and butter, wild-caught fish, eggs, dark leafy greens, whole fruits, in moderation, mindful of the sugar. Big difference.
Is there a way to measure inflammation?
There is. A common blood test marker is C-reactive protein, or CRP. Higher CRP generally means more inflammation in your body. It's something you can track.
Okay. Anything else related to inflammation or cellular health?
They also highlight glutathione. It's a really powerful antioxidant your body makes, crucial for detoxification and even fat burning. Deficiency is linked to a lot of diseases.
Where do you get glutathione?
Your body makes it, but you can support production with certain foods, meat, egg yolks, unpasteurized dairy if tolerated, and some vegetables like broccoli and asparagus contain the precursors.
And one more thing, autophagy. Sounded interesting.
Ah yes, autophagy. Think of it as your body's internal cleaning crew or recycling system. It's a process where your cells clean out damaged parts, old proteins, junk, basically preventing the buildup that can lead to disease.
How do you trigger that?
Low-carb diets and intermittent fasting are powerful triggers for autophagy. When your body isn't constantly dealing with incoming glucose, it has a chance to switch gears and do some housekeeping.
Okay, so diet impacts insulin, inflammation, even cellular cleanup. Are there other, maybe hidden factors at play?
Definitely. The sources bring up environmental factors too. One big one is endocrine-disrupting chemicals, or EDCs.
What are those?
They're chemicals found in everyday things, plastics, like BPA, cosmetics, the linings of food cans and containers. They basically interfere with your body's natural hormones.
How does that relate to obesity and diabetes?
By messing with hormones that control cell development, growth, and metabolism, they're strongly linked to increased risk of obesity and diabetes. They disrupt the body's natural signaling.
So it's not just the food itself, but what the food comes in?
It can be, yeah. And this ties into the concept of epigenetics.
Epigenetics, that's about how genes are expressed, right? Not changing the genes themselves.
Exactly. It's like genes are light switches, and environmental factors like diet, exercise, stress, exposure to chemicals can flip those switches on or off.
Yeah.
So you are what you eat is true even down to the level of which genes are active. These choices can literally change how your body functions over time.
That's powerful. It means we have more control than we might think.
It suggests we do. But then there's another angle. What the sources call the revenge of the plant empire.
Uh-oh, plants fighting back.
Sort of. They talk about lectins. These are natural defense chemicals produced by plants, found in things like beans, grains, wheat, tomatoes, potatoes, nuts, seeds. Quite common foods.
What do lectins do?
They can be irritating to the gut lining. In some people, they might contribute to leaky gut syndrome.
Leaky gut.
Yeah, where the gut lining becomes more permeable, allowing toxins or undigested food particles to leak into the bloodstream. This can trigger widespread inflammation, potentially autoimmune diseases, and might even impact insulin sensitivity.
So even healthy plant foods might cause issues for some people.
It depends on the person and the preparation method, but yes, that's the idea. Cooking, soaking, fermenting can reduce lectins, but they can still be problematic for some.
Are there other plant compounds to be aware of?
Oxalates are another one. These are compounds found in many plants. Spinach, almonds, rhubarb, chocolate are high in them. They can bind to minerals like calcium.
What problems can they cause?
For people who are sensitive or consume them in very large amounts, they can contribute to kidney stones, gout, or even seemingly unexplained joint or muscle pain. Sally K. Norton has written extensively about this.
Okay, so plants aren't universally benign. What about the other side? Animal foods.
Right. The sources make a strong case for ruminant animals like cows, sheep, goats. These animals have this amazing ability to take indigestible grass and convert it into incredibly nutrient-dense meat and fat that we can digest and thrive on.
What are the key benefits highlighted for red meat, especially grass-fed?
Well, it's packed with highly absorbable heme iron, great for preventing anemia, boosting energy. It's a fantastic source of B vitamins, especially B12 and B6, crucial for brain health, nerve function, zinc for immunity, compounds like CoQ10 for cellular energy, creatine for muscles and brain function.
And the fat, isn't that the problem?
This is where they circle back to that core message. Eating fat does not make you fat. Grass-fed meat and butter also contain beneficial fats like omega-3s and CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, which can actually be anti-inflammatory. The issue, they repeat, isn't eating fat, it's the carbohydrates that get turned into fat and stored.
It's a complete reversal of the standard advice.
A total paradigm shift.
It makes you wonder, though, if this information is out there, why hasn't the mainstream caught on? Why is the old advice still so dominant?
Well, that brings us to the history, the politics, and the money involved. The sources point out that the medical establishment has often been incredibly resistant to change, even when the evidence seems clear.
Like with what?
Think about bloodletting. It was standard medical practice for nearly 3,000 years. People died from it, King Charles II, maybe even George Washington. But it persisted until the late 1800s.
Wow, 3,000 years.
or Dr. Semmelweis in hand washing in the mid-1800s. He showed conclusively that doctors washing their hands drastically cut deaths from childbed fever in maternity wards.
Oh.
But he was mocked, rejected, basically driven out of the profession.
Why?
Because he couldn't explain why it worked. Germ theory wasn't established yet. So because the mechanism wasn't understood, the clear results were ignored for 70 years. It shows how hard it can be to overturn established dogma.
That historical context is sobering. So how does this relate to the dietary advice?
The sources point a finger directly at Ansel Keys. He's presented as a key architect of the low fat is good, saturated fat is bad idea.
He was a doctor.
Actually, no. He had a PhD in fish physiology, not an MD. But he conducted the famous 7 countries study back in the 1950s.
The one that proved saturated fat caused heart disease.
That's the one. But the sources here claim Keys basically manipulated the data. He allegedly cherry-picked 7 countries that supported his hypothesis and ignored data from 15 other countries that didn't fit.
Seriously, he left out data.
That's the accusation. That he pushed this hypothesis, it gained traction, influenced public health policy, and led directly to the 1980 U.S. dietary guidelines, which these sources call a disaster for millions.
If that's true, that's deeply troubling.
It is. And then you layer on the influence of industry.
Like big food.
Exactly. The sugar industry, for example. Well, apparently they funded some of Keys' work. And they actively attack scientists like Dr. John Yudkin, who was warning about the dangers of sugar way back in the 70s with his book Pure, White, and Deadly. His career was damaged because he challenged the sugar narrative.
So money talks.
It seems to. And then there's Big Pharma. The sources claim billions are made from statin drugs based on that potentially flawed cholesterol hypothesis. They allege benefits are overstated, side effects are hidden or downplayed.
You mentioned a quote from a medical journal editor.
Yes. Dr. Marcia Angel, former editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, a very prestigious journal, she's quoted saying something to the effect of, "It is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published because of the pervasive influence of the pharmaceutical industry and, frankly, biased or even fraudulent studies."
Coming from her, that's a bombshell.
It really is.
Yeah.
And even organizations like the American Heart Association aren't immune, according to this research. They apparently received significant funding from Procter & Gamble, a major maker of vegetable oils, back when the push against saturated fats was happening.
And their heart check logo on food.
The sources claim that's basically a paid endorsement program. Companies pay the AHA to put that check mark on their products, even if the products themselves contain refined grains, sugars, or other things that might not actually be heart healthy by other measures.
So you can't necessarily trust the label.
We have to look deeper, it seems. And all this ties into how doctors practice medicine. There's something called the standard of care.
What's that?
It's basically the accepted mainstream way of treating specific conditions.
Yeah.
Doctors are often hesitant, even fearful, of deviating from it, even if they suspect a different approach might be better.
Why fearful?
Lawsuits, professional censure. Stepping outside the standard of care, even with good intentions and evidence, can be professionally risky. So they might stick with established, potentially outdated or flawed procedures because it's the accepted thing to do. It slows down progress.
So it's a systemic issue.
It seems to be. The sources basically say, follow the money. You've got politicians who need campaign funds and re-election, often influenced by lobbyists. You've got food and drug companies who need customers and profits. You've got universities needing research funding, sometimes from those same companies. It creates this environment where potentially bad policies and biased research can flourish, prioritizing profit over public health.
Okay. We have covered a lot of ground here, and it paints a pretty unsettling picture.
It really does. The core narrative we've unpacked is that much of the health advice we've received, maybe for generations, could be fundamentally flawed, influenced by politics, by industry, and potentially contributing directly to the epidemic of chronic diseases we see all around us.
But the evidence presented by Tim Coughlin and the experts he cites, it suggests that rethinking our whole approach to food, to health, it isn't just an option, it might be absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and while it's definitely a challenge to decades of conventional wisdom, there's also something really empowering here. It suggests a path for you, the listener, to potentially take more control over your own health.
So here's something to think about, a final thought for you to mull over. If this massive rise in chronic disease seemed to happen right after these national dietary guidelines were put in place, what other accepted truths, maybe in health, maybe elsewhere in life, might actually be contributing to widespread problems?
And maybe ask yourself, How might your health change, potentially dramatically, if you started critically examining all the health advice you get? If you shifted your focus towards real, whole food and really understanding what your unique body needs?
It's definitely food for thought. We really encourage you to look into the resources mentioned in Tim's original material. He lists many doctors, books, websites if you want to explore this further.
Empower yourself with information. Maybe seek out health professionals who are open to these kinds of evidence-based, but maybe less conventional approaches.
And of course, we have to say, this deep dive is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not medical advice. You should always, always consult with a qualified medical professional before making any changes to your diet, medications, or health routine.
Absolutely. Do your own research, talk to informed practitioners, and make the decisions that are right for you.
Thank you for watching. We hope to see you again. Until then, check out our other books at worldsofwonderpublishing.com. You can watch other deep dive broadcasts at thedivedeep.com.